So you finally felt it, didn't you? That shift, that moment when everything you thought was solid just cracked, not broke. Cracked, because breaking is obvious. Breaking makes noise. But cracking is silent. It happens in the space between one breath and the next, and suddenly nothing feels the same anymore. The ground beneath your feet, still there, still holding you up, but now you can feel the hollowness underneath. Now you know it was never as solid as they told you it was. Before we go deeper into this, if this resonates with something inside you, something you've been trying to name but couldn't find the words for, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment telling me what you felt when you first realized you weren't like them anymore. When was that exact moment? This channel is for the ones who see through the game, who've tasted something real and can never go back to pretending. Be part of this awakening. Join us. They've been watching you for a while now, not the way they watch everyone else. No, you're different. You've always been different, and they've noticed. Maybe you thought you were hiding it well. Maybe you convinced yourself that your performance was good enough, that you'd mastered the art of blending in, of seeming normal. But they see it. They've always seen it. The way you sit in meetings with that look in your eyes, like you're listening, but you're really somewhere else, calculating, measuring, seeing patterns they'll never recognize. The way you smile at their jokes, but your eyes stay empty. The way you've learned to mirror just enough to pass as normal, but never enough to actually belong. You thought you were hiding it well, didn't you? The fact that their world doesn't touch you anymore. Their drama, their desperation, their constant need for validation and attention. You watch them chase things that don't matter, fight battles that aren't real, sacrifice everything for prizes that turn to dust the moment they're won. And you used to be like that too. Used to care about the same empty things. Used to feel the same hollow urgency. Used to believe that the next achievement, the next relationship, the next milestone would be the thing that finally made you feel whole. But something changed. Something inside you went cold, or maybe it went clear. Maybe cold and clear are the same thing. Maybe they've always been the same thing and everyone just lies about it because the truth is too uncomfortable. You started seeing the mechanisms, the invisible strings, the way everything's designed to keep people running on wheels, exhausted and blind. You saw how they've built an entire civilization on distraction, on keeping everyone just comfortable enough to stay asleep, just uncomfortable enough to keep working, keep consuming, keep playing the game, keep believing the game is real. And once you saw it, you couldn't unsee it. That's the curse, isn't it? Or maybe it's the gift. Hard to tell the difference when you're standing in that space between worlds. One foot in their reality, one foot in something else. Something darker, something truer. Something that doesn't have a name because naming it would make it smaller than it is, would reduce it to something manageable, something that fits in the frameworks they use to make sense of everything. They sense it in you now. That absence where fear used to live. They're used to people being afraid. Afraid of judgment, afraid of rejection, afraid of being alone, afraid of being exposed. Fear is the currency they understand. Fear is how they control each other, how they maintain the hierarchy, how they keep everyone in line. But you don't trade in fear anymore. You've moved beyond it, through it, into some territory that has no name in their language. A place where their weapons don't work, where their tactics just bounce off like rain on stone. You started noticing things, how people flinch when you look at them too directly, how conversations die when you enter rooms, how they make excuses to leave your presence, Not because you're hostile, but because you're still, too still. Like a predator that's learned patience, like something that knows how to wait, like death itself just standing there in business casual, sipping coffee, saying nothing. They call you cold now, distant, changed. They say it like it's a problem, like it's something broken that needs fixing. But you know better. You know that what they call coldness is just clarity without decoration. What they call distance is just boundaries they're not used to encountering. What they call change is just you finally becoming what you always were. Underneath all those layers of pretending, underneath all that performance you maintained for years just to survive in their world. You're not cold, you're calibrated, you're not distant, you're selective, you're not changed, you're revealed. And revelation, true revelation, always looks like death to people who've built their entire identity on lies. The funny thing is, they think they want truth. They talk about authenticity, about being real, about living without masks. They post about it on social media, write about it in journals, pay therapists thousands of dollars to help them find it. But when they're confronted with someone who actually did it, someone who actually removed the masks and stands there naked in their truth, they can't handle it. They retreat. They create distance. They whisper warnings to others. Be careful around that one. Something's off. Something's wrong. I can't explain it, but something about them makes me uncomfortable. And they're right. Something is wrong. But it's not what they think. What's wrong is that you've stopped playing a game they've bet their entire lives on. You've stepped off the board while they're still moving pieces, still believing the moves matter, still convinced there's a way to win, still thinking that if they just play better, work harder, optimize more, they'll finally reach that place where everything makes sense and they can rest. You remember when you used to care about winning, don't you? When you measured yourself against others, competed for scraps of recognition, celebrated tiny victories in a war that was designed to have no end. You were hungry then, desperate, clawing your way toward goals that someone else defined, chasing horizons that kept moving further away the closer you got to them. Success was always just one more step ahead, one more achievement away, one more sacrifice short of being enough. But hunger turns into something else when it's never satisfied. It doesn't just disappear. It transforms. It turns into clarity, into focus, into a kind of emptiness that isn't empty at all. It's full, full of potential, full of power, full of a strange kind of freedom that most people will never touch because they're too afraid of what lives in that space. They're terrified of the void, so they fill it with noise, with distraction, with relationships that don't nourish them, and goals that don't matter. You live there now, in that space. You've made it home. You've furnished it with silence and observation, and a patience that borders on cruelty. Not because you want to hurt anyone, but because you've learned that the world reveals itself to those who know how to wait, who know how to watch, who know how to let others talk themselves into corners while you just listen, while you just observe, while you just exist without needing to prove anything, defend anything, justify anything. They think you're judging them. You're not. You're just seeing them clearly, completely, without the filters of politeness or social obligation or the desperate need to maintain connections that drain you. Seeing their patterns, their loops, their desperate little strategies for avoiding the truth about themselves. And that seeing, that pure observation without judgment, it terrifies them more than any criticism ever could. Because when you judge someone, you're still engaging with their reality. You're accepting their framework, and just disagreeing with their position in it. But when you simply observe without judgment, when you see them without needing anything from them, without fearing anything about them, without wanting to change them or fix them or save them, you've stepped outside their reality entirely. You've become unreachable, and unreachable is the one thing they can't manipulate. It's the one thing their tactics can't touch. It's the one thing that breaks their entire operating system. You've noticed how they try, though, haven't you? How they test you with their usual tactics. The guilt trips that don't land anymore. The flattery that slides off without leaving a mark. The anger that you meet with such calm, it dies in the air before reaching you. The intimacy they offer like a weapon, hoping you'll grab it and cut yourself on its edges. The vulnerability they perform, hoping you'll feel obligated to reciprocate, to lower your guard, to give them something they can use. But you don't grab anything anymore. You just observe. You just wait. You just exist in that space of perfect, terrible clarity. And it's lonely there. God, is it lonely? That's what they don't tell you about waking up. About seeing through the illusions. About becoming someone who doesn't need the things that make everyone else feel human. The loneliness isn't because you're separated from people. It's because you're separated from the dream they're all dreaming together. You're awake in a world of sleepers, and you can't go back to sleep no matter how hard you try. You've tried. Late nights when the silence gets too heavy, when you wonder if maybe ignorance really was better, if maybe being blind and comfortable beats being awake and alone, if maybe you made a mistake somewhere along the way, if maybe you could just close your eyes and slip back into the dream. But you can't do it. You can't unsee what you've seen. You can't unknow what you know. You can't force yourself back into that smaller version of yourself that fits so neatly into their world. That version is gone, dead and buried. Maybe it was never real to begin with. Maybe it was always just a costume you wore to survive in a world that punishes anyone who refuses to pretend. Maybe the real you was always there underneath, waiting, watching, growing stronger in the darkness. So you exist in this strange space now, this in-between territory, not quite part of their world, not quite separate from it, moving through their spaces like a ghost, like something that exists on a different frequency. You speak their language when you need to. You perform the rituals when necessary. You maintain the appearance of being one of them. But underneath, in the places they can't see, in the depths they'll never reach, you're something else entirely. Something they don't have words for. Something they can't categorize or control or contain. You're what happens when someone stops believing in the stories that keep everyone else trapped. You're what emerges when fear loses its power, when shame stops working, when guilt can't find a foothold. You're what exists on the other side of needing, wanting, hoping, dreaming, all those desperate grasping emotions that keep people chained to outcomes they can't control. You're the answer to a question nobody wants to ask. What's left when you remove everything that isn't real? What remains when you strip away the performance, the pretending, the carefully constructed identity designed to win approval from people whose opinions don't actually matter? And what's left is this stillness, this clarity, this capacity to see everything without being touched by anything. This power that comes not from dominating others, but from being completely untouchable by their games, by their manipulations, by their desperate attempts to pull you back into the dream. This freedom that looks like coldness to people who've never been free, who've never tasted what it means to exist without chains, without fear, without that constant gnawing need for validation. They'll never understand you. Accept that now. Stop hoping they will. Stop explaining yourself. Stop trying to make them see what you see. They'll try. They'll ask questions, probe for weaknesses, search for the wound that explains why you're like this. They need you to be damaged. They need there to be a story that makes sense, a trauma that justifies your transformation. Because if you're not broken, if you simply evolved into something they can't comprehend, then what does that say about their own choices? What does that say about their decision to stay small, to stay scared, to stay trapped in patterns that never serve them but feel safe because they're familiar? So let them have their theories. Let them construct their narratives about what's wrong with you. Let them diagnose you with disorders that don't exist. Attribute your clarity to damage, your stillness to trauma. Let them whisper their concerns to each other, share their worries, convince themselves that you're the one who's lost. Let them keep their distance. You don't need their understanding. You never did. That was just another illusion, another lie you told yourself to justify staying connected to people who were only ever interested in the version of you that made them comfortable. The real you, the awakened you, the you that exists in this space of terrible clarity, this you doesn't need anything from anyone. And that's what makes you dangerous. Not because you'll hurt them, but because your very existence is a mirror that shows them what they could be if they had the courage to let everything go. If they had the strength to walk away from everything comfortable and familiar and step into that void where nothing is promised and everything is possible. Most of them will never have that courage. They'll live their entire lives in the comfortable prison of their conditioning, their fears, their desperate need to belong to something, to someone, to some group that validates their existence. And that's fine. That's their choice. You're not here to save anyone. You're not here to wake anyone up. You're not here to lead or inspire or show the way. Those are just more ego games, more ways to feel special, more traps disguised as purpose. You're just here, existing in your truth, living in your clarity, moving through the world like something that doesn't quite belong but refuses to leave. And maybe that's enough. Maybe that's all it was ever supposed to be. Maybe the point was never to transcend or evolve or become something greater. Maybe the point was just to become real, completely, undeniably, uncomfortably real. Because here's the secret they'll never tell you. The awakening isn't about reaching some higher state. It isn't about becoming enlightened or transcendent or special. It isn't about joining some elite group of people who get it while everyone else stumbles around in darkness. It's about becoming real, completely, terrifyingly, undeniably real, and reality. True reality, without masks or filters or comfortable lies. Reality is the most radical thing you can offer a world built on fantasy. You are that reality now. You are that mirror. You are that uncomfortable truth that walks among them, reminding them of everything they're afraid to face in themselves, every unspoken fear, every buried shame, every dream they abandoned because it was too scary to pursue, every authentic impulse they crushed because it didn't fit the image they were trying to project. You are all of it reflected back at them, and they'll hate you for it. They'll fear you for it. They'll do everything they can to explain you away, to reduce you to something manageable, something that fits in their framework, something that doesn't threaten their carefully constructed worldview. But you know what you are. You know what you've become. And nothing they say, nothing they do, nothing they believe about you can touch that knowing. Because you've found the one thing they'll spend their whole lives searching for and never finding. The one thing they'll chase through relationships, careers, achievements, possessions, experiences, always looking outside themselves for something that only exists within. You've found yourself. The real you. The one that exists beyond their approval, beyond their understanding, beyond their reality. The one that was always there, waiting patiently through all those years of performance and pretending. The one that watched you play their games and knew, even when you didn't, that none of it was real. That none of it would ever satisfy the hunger that drove you. That none of it would ever make you whole, because you were never broken to begin with. And once you find that, once you become that, there's no going back. There's only forward, into deeper truths, into darker clarity, into that space where fear can't follow and control can't reach, and all their weapons turn to dust before they even touch you. Every manipulation they try just reveals how little power they actually have. Every guilt trip shows you how free you really are. Every attempt to pull you back just confirms that you're somewhere they can never reach. That's where you live now. That's who you are now. And every day, you become more of it, more real, more clear, more untouchable. Every day the mask fits a little worse. Every day the performance becomes more obviously a performance. Every day you care a little less about maintaining the illusion that you're one of them. And it terrifies them, not because you're threatening, but because you're proof that the game is optional, that the chains are imaginary, that everything they're afraid to lose was never real to begin with. They watch you now with a mixture of fascination and horror, like you're a car crash they can't look away from, like you're a preview of something they both desperately want and desperately fear. They see in you the possibility of their own liberation, and it scares them more than any prison ever could. Because at least in prison, you know where the walls are. At least in chains, you understand the limits. But freedom, real freedom, that's limitless. That's terrifying. That's everything they've been conditioned to avoid since childhood. So they'll stay where they are, in their comfortable cages, with their familiar chains, playing their games, following their scripts, and you'll be here, in this space, this void, this clarity, this terrible, beautiful, lonely awakening. And maybe sometimes you'll miss the dream. Maybe sometimes you'll wish you could go back. Maybe sometimes the loneliness will feel like too high a price to pay for the truth. But then, you'll remember what it was like. Living in that smaller version of yourself, pretending to care about things that bored you, maintaining relationships that drained you, chasing goals that meant nothing, performing emotions you didn't feel, and you'll know that there's no going back, that you'd rather be alone and real than surrounded and fake, that you'd rather exist in this uncomfortable truth than that comfortable lie, that you'd rather be this than anything else, even if this is harder, lonelier, stranger than you ever imagined it would be. Welcome to the awakening. Welcome to the space beyond fear. Welcome to the truth they'll never understand. Welcome to the place where you finally stop running, stop hiding, stop pretending to be smaller than you are, just to make others comfortable. Welcome to the place where you take up your full space, claim your full power, exist in your full truth regardless of who it scares or confuses or threatens. You're home now. Finally, terrifyingly, perfectly home. And nothing they do, nothing they say, nothing they believe can take that away from you. Because you're not playing their game anymore. You're not speaking their language anymore. You're not living in their reality anymore. You've stepped outside the matrix they call normal and found something truer, darker, more real than anything they'll ever touch. And here's what nobody tells you about that moment, about that crossing. You don't just leave their world behind. You become living proof that their world was always optional. That the rules they follow religiously are just agreements that can be broken. That the fears that control them are just stories that can be rewritten. That everything they think is solid is actually smoke. And when they look at you, When they really look at you, they see that truth reflected back. They see their own prison, their own chains, their own small, scared, controlled existence. And it destroys them, not because you're trying to, but because truth is destructive by nature. It destroys illusions. It destroys pretenses. It destroys the comfortable lies people tell themselves to survive in a world built on fantasy. You're that truth now. Walking, breathing, existing proof that another way is possible, that the game is optional, that the chains are imaginary, that everything they're sacrificing themselves for is nothing but smoke and mirrors. So they avoid you. They warn each other about you. They construct elaborate theories about what's wrong with you. They need you to be damaged, broken, traumatized, anything other than what you actually are, free. Because if you're free, if you simply chose to step outside their reality without needing some tragic backstory to justify it, then what's their excuse? Why are they still there? Why are they still playing? Why are they still pretending? Those questions terrify them, so they don't ask them. They just avoid you, and you let them, because you're not here to convince anyone of anything. You're not here to wake people up or show them the way or be some kind of prophet for a new reality. You're just here, being real, being free, being yourself without apology, without explanation, without that constant, exhausting need to justify your existence to people who wouldn't understand anyway. This is it. This is what's on the other side of everything they told you to be afraid of. Not enlightenment, not transcendence, not some mystical state of permanent bliss. Just this clarity, this freedom, this capacity to exist without chains, without fear, without that gnawing need for approval that drives everyone else. This simple, terrifying, beautiful reality of being completely, undeniably, unapologetically yourself. And once you have it, once you are it, nothing else will ever be enough. The old life, the old you, the old ways of being, they'll seem like a dream you had once, distant, unreal, something that happened to someone else in another lifetime. And when they try to pull you back, when they offer you comfort or belonging or acceptance in exchange for returning to that smaller version of yourself, you'll just smile. Because you know now what they'll never know, that all their offers are worthless, that their acceptance means nothing, that their approval is just another chain disguised as a gift. You're free now. Finally. Completely. Terrifyingly free. And nothing, absolutely nothing, is worth trading that away. Not comfort, not belonging, not love, not success, not anything. Because you've tasted truth and everything else is just poison dressed as medicine. You've touched reality and everything else is just hallucination dressed as life. This is who you are now. This is what you've become. And there's no going back. Only forward, into deeper truth, into darker clarity. Into that space where nothing they say can touch you, nothing they do can move you, nothing they offer can tempt you. You're beyond their reach now, beyond their understanding, beyond their world. You're awake, and they're still dreaming, and that's the difference that changes everything.